The vast chamber of the Galactic Council headquarters fell silent as Ambassador Jack Daniels rose from his seat. The circular room, designed to accommodate representatives of over 300 spacefaring civilizations, sparkled with the reflections of distant stars through its transparent dome ceiling. For 3 years, Jack had occupied the smallest seat at the outermost ring, the traditional placement for newcomers to galactic politics. Despite Earth's remarkable technological advancements that had enabled interstellar travel within a single generation, humans remained classified as a developing species by Council standards. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, Jack began, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic system. After 3 years of negotiations, 16 proposals, and countless hours of deliberation, I must inform you that humanity is officially withdrawing from these peace talks. The translation devices worn by each representative processed his words into 300 different languages simultaneously. A wave of murmurs and clicking sounds, the equivalent of gasps in several non-humanoid species, rippled through the chamber. High Chancellor Zextrol, the ancient Varaxian who had led the council for over 70 years, leaned forward on his elevated platform. His 4 eyes narrowed, and the bioluminescent patterns on his gray skin pulsed with what Jack had learned to recognize as annoyance. Ambassador Daniels. Zextrol's voice boomed across the chamber. This is most irregular. The Council has been exceedingly patient with your species integration. Our final proposal offers Earth protection and limited trade rights, generous terms for a civilization that has barely mastered rudimentary interstellar travel. Jack maintained his composure, though inside a fire burned. For 3 years, he had endured condescension disguised as diplomacy. The Council's generous terms amounted to little more than colonization by another name. Earth would become a protectorate with no voting rights, restricted technology access, and obligatory resource contributions to the Council, all in exchange for protection from threats that the Council itself often manufactured. With all due respect, High Chancellor, Jack replied, careful to keep his tone measured. Humanity did not journey to the stars to become subordinates. The Council's final proposal classifies Earth as a Grade 3 developing world, with a 100-year probationary period before reconsideration for full membership. This is unacceptable. From the middle tier of seats, Ambassador Kuruval of the Eldoran Confederation rose. The tall, slender being with luminous skin that seemed to hold the patterns of nebulae within it was one of the few council members who had treated the human delegation with genuine respect. Perhaps we should reconsider the terms, Kuruval suggested, their melodic voice carrying a hint of concern. The humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability and innovation. A 100-year probation seems excessive. Chancellor Zextrol waved a dismissive hand. The Council's decision was nearly unanimous, Ambassador Kuruval. 312 civilizations agreed to these terms. Only yours and 5 others suggested amendments. Jack exchanged a brief glance with Kuruval, a silent acknowledgement of the Eldoran support. Then, he addressed the Council again. Humanity thanks those who advocated for fair treatment. But we cannot, and will not, accept subordinate status. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from these negotiations. We will chart our own path among the stars. With those words, Jack collected his datapad, nodded respectfully to Kuruval and the handful of other allies humanity had made, and walked toward the chamber's exit. His 2 aides, Paula White and Ryan Peters, followed silently. This is folly, Zextrol called after him. No civilization has ever rejected Council protection and prospered. You condemn your people to isolation. Jack paused at the threshold but didn't turn around. Perhaps, he said loud enough for all to hear, or perhaps we've simply decided not to participate in a game where the rules were written to ensure we never win. The doors slid closed behind the human delegation, leaving a chamber full of stunned representatives. In the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever voluntarily withdrawn from membership negotiations. In the corridor outside, Paula finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Well, that's done. Plan Sigma is now active. Ryan checked his communication device. Admiral Miller confirms receipt of our signal. Phase 1 begins immediately. Jack nodded grimly. Let's hope we've made the right decision. What the Council didn't know, what Jack had carefully concealed for the past year, was that humanity's withdrawal was not an emotional response to wounded pride. It was the first step in a carefully orchestrated strategy. Plan Sigma had begun as a contingency, but had evolved into humanity's primary approach once the Council's true nature became apparent. For 3 years, Jack and his team had endured endless negotiations while gathering intelligence, forging secret alliances, and preparing Earth for a different kind of galactic integration. As their shuttle departed from the Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime, Jack gazed out at the sprawling city planet that served as the administrative center for 300 civilizations. The soaring spires and complex infrastructure represented power accumulated over millennia, power that the established species had no intention of sharing with newcomers like humanity. Admiral Miller reports that all Earthships have been recalled from Council space, Paula said, checking the encrypted communications. The official story for the Council is that we're consolidating our fleet for the journey home. And the unofficial story? Jack asked. Ryan smiled thinly. Rendezvous points Alpha through Delta are activated. The Shadow Fleet is already in position. Over the past 2 years, while Council bureaucrats droned on about human development timelines, Earth had been constructing vessels in secret locations throughout unexplored regions of the Orion Arm. These ships incorporated both human innovations and adapted technologies gleaned from their limited exposure to Council science. What's the Council's reaction so far? Jack asked. Exactly what we predicted, Paula replied, studying her datapad. Confusion, primarily with a healthy dose of condescension. They're already discussing how long it will take before we come crawling back. Jack allowed himself a small smile. They still don't understand us at all. The truth was, humanity had been planning for this day since their first meeting with the Council 3 years ago. What had appeared to be earnest, if naive diplomatic efforts by Earth, were actually an elaborate intelligence-gathering operation. Every concession requested, every technology demonstration, every cultural exchange had been carefully designed to assess the Council's true nature and technological capabilities. And what they had discovered was troubling. The Galactic Council was not the benevolent federation of equals it portrayed itself to be, but rather a hierarchical structure designed to maintain the dominance of the founding species. Newer civilizations were routinely exploited for resources and kept from accessing technologies that might allow them to challenge the established order. How long until we reach the rendezvous? Jack asked. 17 hours, Ryan replied. Admiral Miller will meet us there with the Genesis. The Genesis was Earth's most advanced vessel, constructed in secret, using a combination of human innovation and reverse-engineered Council technology. It would serve as the command center for the next phase of Plan Sigma. As their shuttle jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jack reviewed the strategy that would unfold over the coming months. Humanity would not be returning to Earth in defeat. Instead, they would be implementing a 3-pronged approach that the military strategists had codenamed the Sigma Protocol. First, they would establish independent trade relationships with non-Council worlds, planets, and species that had either rejected Council membership or had never been offered it. Second, they would continue developing their fleet in secret locations, incorporating technologies they had discreetly acquired during their 3 years of negotiations. And third, they would forge a new alliance, an alternative to the Council, based on principles of equality and mutual benefit. It was a gamble, certainly. But as Jack had told the Council, humanity refused to play a game they could never win. At Nexus Prime, the reaction to humanity's dramatic exit was mixed. High Chancellor Zextrol convened an emergency session of the Council's Executive Committee, the representatives of the 12 founding species who held permanent seats. "This is unprecedented," declared Morrell, the insectoid representative of the Xylan hive. "No developing species has ever rejected our terms." "Because they understand the benefits we offer," replied Graltak, of the Vermilion Compact, his scaled skin shifting colors with his emotions. Protection Guidance Limited Technology transfers all in exchange for reasonable resource contributions. Kuruval, who held one of the 12 seats as the Eldarin representative, spoke carefully. Perhaps we should consider that our standard terms may appear less beneficial from the perspective of a young species. Zextrol's bioluminescent patterns flashed in irritation. The humans were offered the same terms as every other developing world. They are not special. But that is precisely where we may be mistaken, Kuruval countered. In 3 short years, they have demonstrated adaptation rates far beyond Council projections. Their engineers modified our basic shield technology into configurations even our experts find intriguing. They mastered interstellar travel without quantum folding, something our scientists considered impossible. Duh. Anomalies. Zextrol dismissed. And irrelevant now. They have made their choice. He turned to a holographic display showing the retreating human vessels. The question now is how we respond. Standard protocol suggests observation, offered Morrell. A small fleet to monitor their activities until they inevitably petition for readmission. I concur, said Greltak. Additionally, we should implement Level 2 trade restrictions. Let them experience the isolation they have chosen. Kuruval frowned. I must dissent. Such measures will only confirm their worst suspicions about our intentions. If we truly wish for their eventual integration, we should respect their decision while keeping diplomatic channels open. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the executive committee voted 10-2 in favor of observation and economic sanctions. Only Kuruval and the representative of the Solari Collective opposed the measures. Very well, Zextrol concluded. Commander Vra will lead an observation fleet to the Sol system. Meanwhile, all Council worlds are directed to suspend trade with Earth and its colonies. Let us see how long their independence lasts when faced with the realities of galactic isolation. As the session adjourned, Kuruval lingered studying the star chart where Earth's solar system was highlighted. You seem troubled, Eldarin, Zextrol commented, approaching with the fluid movement characteristic of his species. I fear we underestimate these humans, Kuruval replied. They are not like other species we have encountered. Zextrol's patterns pulsed with amusement. All newcomers believe themselves exceptional, Kuruval. In 3 millennia, how many have truly been so? Perhaps none, Kuruval conceded. Or perhaps we have simply never allowed any to demonstrate their exceptionality. Zextrol regarded the Eldarin with his 4 eyes. You have always had a soft spot for developing worlds, old friend. It is admirable but unnecessary. The humans will return when they realize the harshness of the void without our protection. And if they do not, then they will fade into obscurity, as have all who rejected Council wisdom, Zextrol said with finality. The galaxy is unforgiving to the unprepared. As Zextrol departed, Kuruval remained gazing at the holographic representation of Earth's solar system. Unlike most Council members, the Eldarin had taken the time to study human history extensively. What they had found was a species defined by resilience, adaptability, and a sometimes reckless determination. The Council's dismissive approach was, in Kuruval's estimation, a potentially grave miscalculation. Meanwhile, 17 light-years from Nexus Prime, Jack Daniels's shuttle emerged from faster-than-light travel at the coordinates designated as Rendezvous Point Alpha. To the casual observer, the region would appear empty, just another unremarkable sector of space. In reality, it was the gathering point for what humanity was calling the Independent Fleet. As the shuttle's sensors came online, Jack watched as the space around them seemed to shimmer, revealing over 30 vessels of various sizes. At the center of the formation was the Genesis, Earth's most advanced starship, and Admiral Susan Miller's command vessel. Ambassador Admiral Miller greeted them as they boarded the Genesis. A tall woman with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent a lifetime in military service, Miller had been the architect of humanity's space defense strategy since first contact. Admiral, Jack nodded. I take it you received our transmission. Indeed. The Council reacted exactly as predicted. Down to the condescending farewell, Jack confirmed. They're completely convinced we'll be back begging for readmission within months. Miller nodded, her expression grim. That works in our favor. Follow me to the command center. The rest of the team is waiting. The Genesis's command center was a model of efficiency with holographic displays showing fleet positions, stellar cartography, and communication channels with Earth and its 5 colony worlds. Around a central table stood the core team of Operation Sigma military strategists, diplomats, and scientists who had been planning this moment for over a year. Ladies and gentlemen, Miller addressed the group. Ambassador Daniels has successfully initiated Phase 1. The Council believes we're retreating to lick our wounds. In reality, we're now implementing the most ambitious strategic operation in human history. She activated a holographic display of the galaxy, highlighting thousands of star systems. For 3 years, we've presented a carefully crafted image to the Council, that of an earnest but naive species eager for acceptance. Meanwhile, we've been mapping unregistered hyperspace routes, identifying non-Council worlds open to trade, and cataloging the Council's technological vulnerabilities. Another display activated, showing dozens of ship movements. Our public fleet is indeed returning to Earth, as the Council will observe. What they don't know is that we've been constructing and deploying Shadow Fleet vessels for 18 months. These ships incorporate both Council-derived technology and our own innovations. Jack stepped forward. The diplomatic team has established back channels with 14 non-Council civilizations. Some are species who rejected Council terms as we have. Others exist in regions the Council considers undesirable for expansion. All share our frustration with Council policies. Additionally, Miller continued, we've identified 27 independent trading outposts operating beyond Council jurisdiction. These will serve as our initial economic network, while Council sanctions are in effect. A scientist named Dr. Eliza Chen stood next. My team has completed adaptation of the Council communication protocols. We can now monitor their standard transmissions without detection. We've also made significant progress reverse engineering their shield harmonics and sensor technology. For the next several hours, the team refined the details of Phase 2, the implementation of what they were calling the Orion strategy. While officially appearing to accept isolation, humanity would be quietly building an alternative network of alliances, trade relationships, and military capabilities. The Council expects us to either wither in isolation or come crawling back, Jack said as the meeting concluded. They cannot conceive of a third option that we might thrive without them. That blind spot is our greatest advantage, Miller agreed. They've spent millennia incorporating developing worlds into their hierarchy. The concept of a successful independent network is outside their experience. As the meeting dispersed, Jack found himself standing beside Miller at a viewport, gazing out at the assembled fleet. Do you think we're doing the right thing? He asked quietly. 3 years ago, we dreamed of joining a galactic community. Now we're essentially declaring our independence from it. Miller considered the question. The community we dreamed of doesn't exist, Jack. The Council isn't a federation of equals. It's an empire that simply found a more sophisticated form of conquest. They offer protection in exchange for submission and call it diplomacy. And if we fail, then we'll have failed on our terms, not theirs. She turned to face him. But I don't believe we will fail. The Council has grown complacent. They can't imagine a serious challenge to their order, which is precisely why they're vulnerable to one. Jack nodded, finding comfort in her confidence. Then let's get to work. Over the next 6 months, the Sigma Protocol unfolded with precision. To the Council observers stationed at the edge of the Sol system, humanity appeared to be struggling with their self-imposed isolation. Trade between Earth and its colonies continued, but without access to Council markets, their economy appeared to be contracting. Occasional transmissions deliberately allowed to be intercepted suggested growing dissatisfaction among certain sectors of human society. Commander Vra, leading the Council observation fleet, dutifully reported these developments back to Nexus Prime. A veteran of numerous such missions, the Krell commander had seen this pattern before initial defiance, giving way to the harsh realities of galactic isolation. High Chancellor Vra reported during a scheduled communication, "The humans continue their isolation protocol, but our sensors detect signs of economic stress. Several major industrial facilities on their colony worlds have reduced output by 30%. Zextrol's image flickered in the holographic display. As expected, their pride sustains them for now, but reality will soon assert itself. Maintain position and continue monitoring. There is one anomaly to report," Vra added. "Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the uncharted regions beyond their Kuiper belt. Possible ship movements that don't match registered human vessel signatures. Investigate discreetly," Zextrol ordered. "But maintain your primary position. The humans may be attempting to establish relations with non-council entities, a common last resort of isolated species." "Understood, High Chancellor." Vra out. What neither Vra nor Zextrol realized was that the economic downturn they observed was largely theatrical, a carefully orchestrated performance for Council sensors. The reduced output from human colonies was real, but it wasn't due to economic hardship. Those resources had simply been redirected to hidden facilities in the asteroid belts and on the dark sides of uninhabited moons, locations shielded from casual observation. Meanwhile, humanity's Shadow Fleet had expanded dramatically. Utilizing the unregistered hyperspace routes discovered during their Council negotiations, human vessels were regularly traveling to distant sectors, establishing trade with non-Council worlds, and gathering intelligence on Council activities. On Earth, public knowledge of the Sigma Protocol was limited. Most citizens understood only that negotiations with the Galactic Council had broken down, and Earth was pursuing independent relationships with other spacefaring civilizations. The full scope of the military and intelligence operations remained classified, known only to senior government officials and the Sigma team. In his office at the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, Jack reviewed the latest reports from the field. Paula and Ryan sat across from him, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. "The Morrigan Collective has agreed to our proposed trade terms," Paula reported. "That makes 17 non-council civilizations now in our network. And the technology exchange with the Solari is proceeding ahead of schedule," Ryan added. "Their quantum computation expertise complements our materials science perfectly." Jack nodded, studying the holographic map displaying their growing network of allies. "And what about the Council? Any change in their stance?" "Still following the standard playbook," Paula replied. "Observation sanctions and occasional passive-aggressive messages, reminding us that we can petition for readmission at any time." "They're beginning to notice the discrepancies, though," Ryan warned. "Commander Vra has deployed scout ships to investigate the activity beyond the Kuiper belt. It's only a matter of time before they realize the truth." Jack considered this. "Which means we need to accelerate Phase 3. Contact Admiral Miller. Tell her it's time to implement the Revelation Protocol." The Revelation Protocol was the most audacious element of humanity's strategy, the moment when they would reveal to the Council that their perceived isolation had been an illusion. The timing was critical. They needed enough strength to demonstrate their viability as an independent power, but had to move before the Council discovered their network and moved to crush it. What Jack didn't share with his aides was his private communication with Ambassador Kuruval. Throughout the 6 months of official isolation, Jack had maintained a secret channel with the Eldarin diplomat, who had become increasingly concerned about the Council's approach to the human situation. "Your Council colleagues still believe we're on the verge of economic collapse?" Jack had asked during their most recent exchange. "They do," Kuruval confirmed, their voice distorted by the encryption protocols. "Zextrol reports your situation with particular satisfaction at each executive committee meeting." "And what do you believe, Ambassador?" There was a pause before Kuruval responded. I believe, Ambassador Daniels, that your species is far more adaptable than my colleagues understand. I have studied your history. You have faced isolation and adversity before. You have never responded by surrendering. Jack smiled slightly. You're a keen observer. I am also concerned, Kuruval admitted. When the Council discovers whatever you are planning, and they will discover it, their response may be severe. There are protocols for dealing with what they classify as emerging threats. We're aware of the risk, Jack said solemnly. But we cannot accept the terms they offered. Not when they amount to perpetual subordination. I understand, Kuruval replied. And while my position prevents me from offering direct assistance, I can tell you that not all Council members share Zextrol's dismissive view. Some of us believe the Council itself must evolve, if it is to truly represent galactic civilization. It was this conversation that had convinced Jack the time had come for Phase 3. There were potential allies within the Council itself species who recognized the flaws in the current system, but lacked the leverage to challenge it. Humanity could provide that leverage. 2 weeks later, Commander Vra's observation fleet detected unusual energy signatures from the region they had been monitoring beyond the Kuiper Belt. Before they could investigate further, their sensors alerted them to multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. Battle stations, Vra ordered as the unknown vessels appeared on their screens. Identify those ships immediately. Commander, his sensor officer reported with confusion, they appear to be human vessels, but the configurations don't match any registered Earthships. On the commander's view screen, over 50 vessels of various sizes took formation. At their center was a ship unlike any Vra had ever seen, sleek, with lines that suggested both Council and non-Council design influences. It was approximately twice the size of his command ship, and bristled with what his sensors identified as advanced defensive systems. Incoming transmission, his communications officer announced. Put it through, Vra ordered, his four-fingered hand instinctively moving to the ceremonial blade at his belt, a nervous habit from his younger days. The view screen shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Commander Vra, she greeted him. I am Admiral Susan Miller of the United Earth Fleet. I trust we find you well. Vra struggled to maintain his composure. Admiral Miller, this deployment of forces was not declared to the Council observation mission as required by protocol. Miller smiled slightly. That's correct, Commander. Much like your 3 scout ships currently positioning themselves near Jupiter's orbit weren't declared to us. Vra's skin flushed with the Krell equivalent of surprise. Those scout ships were utilizing the most advanced cloaking technology the Council possessed. They should have been undetectable to human sensors. I'm contacting you as a courtesy, Miller continued. The vessels you see before you represent a portion of what we call the Independent Fleet. We will be conducting exercises in this region for the next several days. We recommend your observation fleet maintain a distance of at least 1 light minute to avoid any navigational complications. This is outrageous, Vra sputtered. You have no authority to dictate terms to a Council observation mission. On the contrary, Commander, Miller replied calmly. You are currently in sovereign human space operating under a directive that we never acknowledged or agreed to. We have tolerated your presence as a professional courtesy. That courtesy continues provided you observe our safety recommendations. Before Vra could respond, his tactical officer interrupted. Commander, we're detecting additional vessels emerging from hyperspace at coordinates 187 Mark IV. The view screen split to show another group of ships appearing. These vessels didn't match human designs either. They bore the distinctive configurations of the Solari Collective and the Morrigan Confederation species that had rejected Council membership decades ago. As you can see, Miller continued, we've been making friends. The upcoming exercises will include joint operations with our allies. Again, for safety reasons, we suggest you maintain your distance. With that, the transmission ended, leaving Vra staring at the assembled fleet in stunned silence. Orders, Commander, his second-in-command prompted. Vra's mind raced. His small observation fleet was outnumbered and potentially outgunned. More concerning was the presence of non-council vessels in coordination with the humans. This was no longer a simple case of a defiant species. This suggested the emergence of an alternative power block. "Maintain position," he finally ordered, "and prepare a priority transmission to High Chancellor Zextrol. The situation with the humans has devolved." On Nexus Prime, the news of the human fleet's revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. An emergency session was convened with representatives of all 300 member species in attendance. "This is unprecedented," Graltak declared, his scales shifting rapidly between colors. "They've been building a secret fleet while pretending to struggle under our sanctions. Not just a fleet," Moral of the Xylan Hive added. "They've established relationships with non-council worlds. The Solari and Morrigan vessels in their formation confirm it." Chancellor Zextrol raised his hands for silence. "Let us not overreact. Commander Vra reports that while the human fleet is impressive for a developing world, it poses no significant threat to Council security." "With respect, Chancellor," a representative from a mid-tier world interjected, "the threat isn't just military. They're establishing an alternative diplomatic and economic network outside Council control. This could encourage other dissatisfied worlds to consider similar actions." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. For many of the newer Council members, the humans' actions represented a path they had never considered viable independence from the Council's hierarchical structure. "Perhaps," Kuruval suggested, rising from their seat, "this development offers us an opportunity for reflection. If a species that has possessed interstellar capability for less than a generation can establish such an alternative network, we must ask ourselves why they found it preferable to Council membership." Zextrol's bioluminescent patterns flashed with irritation. "What would you have us do?" Eldarin reward their defiance. "Revise 3,000 years of established protocol because one species objects to its terms?" "I would have us adapt," Kuruval replied calmly. "As they have adapted. The galaxy is changing, Chancellor. Perhaps the Council should change with it." The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly heated. Some representatives demanded immediate military action to dismantle the human network before it could expand further. Others suggested diplomatic outreach to bring the humans back to the negotiating table. A small but vocal minority even expressed support for reconsidering the Council's integration policies. In the end, the Council remained divided, unable to reach consensus on a response. Zextrol, using his authority as High Chancellor, issued a temporary directive. The observation of human activities would continue, but no direct action would be taken pending further assessment. As the session adjourned, Kuruval approached Zextrol privately. "This temporary measure merely delays the inevitable, Chancellor. We must decide how to engage with this new reality." Zextrol's patterns pulsed slowly, a sign of deep thought among his species. 3,000 years, Kuruval. For 3,000 years the Council has maintained order in this galaxy. We have prevented wars, managed resources, guided developing worlds. And now these newcomers presume to challenge all of it. "Not challenge, perhaps," Kuruval suggested. "Transform. There is a difference." Zextrol fixed all four eyes on the Eldarin. "You've been in communication with them, haven't you?" Kuruval didn't deny it. "I have maintained certain channels, yes, in the interests of preventing unnecessary conflict. And what do these humans truly want beyond their pride and defiance? The same thing every species wants, Chancellor. A voice that matters. Respect for their sovereignty. The opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization as equals, not subordinates." Zextrol was silent for a long moment. "Equality." He finally said the word, sounding almost foreign from his mouth. "An interesting concept, but a practical impossibility. Some species have guided galactic affairs for millennia. Others have barely left their home systems. How can they be equals? Perhaps," Kuruval suggested, "by measuring worth through contribution and innovation rather than longevity. The humans may be young, but they've already demonstrated remarkable capabilities. Who knows what they might offer if we treated them as partners rather than probationers. Meanwhile, aboard the Genesis, Admiral Miller and Ambassador Daniels monitored the Council's emergency session through their intelligence network. Their advanced communications array, enhanced with technology from their new allies, allowed them to intercept and decrypt Council transmissions with unprecedented efficiency. "They're divided," Miller observed. "That's good for us. A unified Council might have opted for immediate military response." Jack nodded, studying the transcript of the debate. "Kuruval is advocating for us more openly now. That's a risk for them. Do you think the Eldarin will face repercussions?" "Perhaps," Jack acknowledged. "But Kuruval represents one of the founding species. They have certain protections even Zextrol can't ignore." Miller turned to a tactical display, showing the positions of Council vessels near human space. "They've reinforced the observation fleet, but they're maintaining their distance. No aggressive posturing yet." "They're still assessing," Jack explained. "The Council moves slowly by design. Consensus among 300 species isn't achieved quickly, especially when it involves an unprecedented situation. Which gives us time to implement the next phase," Miller concluded. Jack nodded. "Contact our allies. It's time for the summit." The summit was to be the formal unveiling of what humanity was calling the Orion Alliance, a collection of independent worlds united by principles of mutual respect, technological cooperation, and defensive support. Unlike the hierarchical structure of the Council, the Alliance would operate on a consensus model with equal voting rights, regardless of a civilization's age or technological advancement. The location chosen for this historic gathering was New Horizon, Earth's newest colony world. Situated at the edge of what the Council considered civilized space, New Horizon symbolized humanity's determination to expand beyond the boundaries others had defined for them. As representatives from 23 non-Council worlds arrived for the summit, the Council observation fleet reported the unprecedented gathering to Nexus Prime. Zextrol, now facing increasing pressure from Council members demanding action, finally made a decision. "We will send a delegation," he announced to the Executive Committee. "Not to negotiate, merely to observe and gather intelligence. We must understand the full scope of this alliance before determining our response." "Who will lead this delegation?" Greltak asked. Zextrol considered for a moment. "Ambassador Kuruval," he finally said. "The Eldarin has maintained communication with the humans. They may be more forthcoming in their presence." "And if they interpret this as recognition of their alliance?" Morrell questioned. "We will make our position clear," Zextrol replied firmly. "This is observation only. The Council does not recognize any alternative to its authority in galactic affairs." When Kuruval was informed of their assignment, the Eldarin received the news with outward calm. Inwardly, they recognized the dual nature of Zextrol's decision. It was both an opportunity and a test of loyalty. By sending Kuruval, the Chancellor was offering the humans a familiar face, while simultaneously assessing whether the Eldarin sympathies had compromised their allegiance to the Council. 2 days later, Kuruval's diplomatic vessel arrived at New Horizon, escorted by 3 Council ships. As they established orbit around the vibrant blue-green world, Kuruval observed the dozens of vessels already in position, a diverse collection representing species from across the galaxy, many of whom the Council had dismissed as insignificant. Ambassador Kuruval. Jack Daniels' voice came through the communication system. "Welcome to New Horizon. We're honored by your presence." "Ambassador Daniels," Kuruval acknowledged. "I must clarify that I come as an observer only. The Council has not authorized negotiations." "Of course," Jack replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Nevertheless, we've prepared accommodation for you and your staff planetside, should you wish to observe more directly." Kuruval considered the invitation. Standard Council protocol would have them remain aboard their vessel, maintaining separation. But that would defeat the purpose of gathering meaningful intelligence. "We accept your hospitality, Ambassador. My chief aide and I will transport to the surface. The rest of my delegation will remain aboard." Hours later, Kuruval found themselves in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Horizons' capital city. The architecture blended Earth styles, with influences from various galactic cultures, a physical manifestation of the collaboration the summit represented. Representatives from 23 worlds occupied seats arranged in a circular pattern, with no position elevated above others, a pointed contrast to the Council's tiered seating arrangement. At the center of the hall stood a holographic display of the galaxy, with the territories of the assembled civilizations highlighted. Jack Daniels opened the proceedings with a speech that Kuruval found both inspiring and concerning from a council perspective. Distinguished representatives. Jack began. For too long, galactic civilization has operated under the assumption that age equals wisdom, that longevity equals legitimacy. The Galactic Council, for all its achievements, has fossilized into a hierarchy that preserves power rather than promoting progress. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Today, we propose an alternative, not in opposition to the Council, but as a complement to it. A community of worlds where contribution matters more than chronology, where innovation is valued over tradition, where mutual respect replaces paternalistic guidance. Jack gestured to the holographic galaxy. The Orion Alliance does not seek to replace the Council or challenge its legitimate authority. We simply offer another path for worlds that wish to engage as equals rather than as petitioners. As Jack outlined the Alliance's principles, mutual defense, open technology exchange, and consensus-based decision-making, Kuruval noted the enthusiasm of the assembled representatives. Many represented worlds that had, like Earth, rejected Council terms. Others came from civilizations the Council had deemed unsuitable for membership due to cultural or biological factors. All shared a hunger for recognition the Council had denied them. When the formal presentation concluded, the representatives broke into discussion groups. Kuruval found themselves approached by Jack. "Your thoughts, Ambassador?" Jack asked quietly. Kuruval chose their words, carefully aware of their dual role as Council representative and potential ally. "You have created something remarkable in a very short time, Ambassador Daniels. The Council underestimated your species' determination and diplomatic skill. And will they continue to underestimate us?" "That," Kuruval replied, "depends on what you truly intend. If this alliance is genuinely complementary to the Council, as you claim, there may be room for coexistence. If it is perceived as a rival power block—" Jack nodded, understanding. "We have no desire for conflict, Ambassador, but neither will we accept subordination." "A delicate balance to maintain," Kuruval observed. "Perhaps," Jack acknowledged. "But we believe it's a balance worth striking. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple approaches to cooperation." The summit continued for 3 days with extensive discussions of trade agreements, technology sharing protocols, and mutual defense arrangements. Throughout, Kuruval observed and occasionally participated, asking questions that helped clarify the Alliance's intentions, while providing insights that could help bridge the conceptual gap between the two organizations. On the final day, representatives from each world signed the Foundation Charter of the Orion Alliance. As was human custom, the signing was accompanied by a ceremony and celebration. Kuruval, as an observer, was not expected to participate, but was invited to attend. During the celebration, Admiral Susan Miller approached the Eldarin diplomat. Unlike Jack, whose role required diplomatic subtlety, Miller spoke with military directness. "You'll be reporting back to Zextral soon," she said without preamble. "What will you tell him?" Kuruval appreciated the straightforward approach. "The truth, Admiral, that you have established a functional alternative to Council membership for worlds dissatisfied with its terms. That this alliance poses no direct threat to Council security, but represents a significant challenge to its presumed monopoly on galactic organization. And your recommendation?" Kuruval's luminous skin pulsed thoughtfully. "I will suggest that the Council has 2 options, adaptation or confrontation. The former requires humility, the latter risks much for little gain." Miller studied the Eldarin with newfound respect. You understand that if the Council chooses confrontation, we will defend ourselves and our allies. I do, Kuruval confirmed. Which is why I will strongly advocate for adaptation, though I cannot guarantee my colleagues will listen. 3 days later, Kuruval stood before the Galactic Council, delivering their report on the summit. The chamber was even more crowded than usual, with representatives from all member worlds, eager to hear firsthand about the upstart alliance. The Orion Alliance, as they call it, consists of 24 worlds including Earth and its colonies, Kuruval explained. Their charter establishes principles of mutual defense, open technology exchange, and consensus governance. A pale imitation of council structures, Greltak commented dismissively. Not quite, Kuruval corrected. Unlike our hierarchical model, their system grants equal standing to all signatories, regardless of technological development or species age. Decisions require consensus rather than majority vote. Chaotic and inefficient, Morrell predicted. Such a structure cannot endure. Perhaps, Kuruval acknowledged. Or perhaps it offers flexibility our system lacks. Their technology-sharing protocols have already produced notable innovations, adaptations of council designs improved through collaborative effort. Chancellor Zextrol, who had listened silently until now, finally spoke. And you believe this? Alliance poses a threat to council authority. Kuruval chose their next words with great care. I believe it offers an alternative that some worlds find attractive. Whether that constitutes a threat depends on how we respond to it. Explain, Zextrol demanded. If we dismiss them, if we attempt to isolate or pressure their members, we validate their critique of our methods. If, however, we engage with them, recognize their autonomy, while seeking areas of cooperation, we demonstrate the wisdom and adaptability that has sustained the Council for 3 millennia. The chamber erupted in debate, with representatives dividing along familiar lines. The older, more established worlds advocated for containment and isolation of the alliance, while younger members showed greater openness to engagement. As the debate intensified, news arrived that would dramatically shift the Council's perspective. Commander Vra, whose observation fleet had been monitoring alliance activities, reported that 3 worlds previously seeking Council membership had withdrawn their applications and requested admission to the Orion Alliance instead. This revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. For the first time in Council history, developing worlds were actively choosing an alternative path. The implications were profound, the Council's presumed inevitability, as the path to galactic integration was being challenged. Chancellor Zextrol, seeing the growing discord, called for an executive session limiting attendance to the 12 permanent members. Once the chamber had cleared, he addressed his colleagues directly. This situation has evolved beyond a simple case of human defiance, he acknowledged. We face a structural challenge to the Council's position in galactic affairs. Then we must respond decisively, Greltak insisted. Deploy the fleet. A show of force will remind these worlds of the benefits of Council protection. And if they resist, Kuruval challenged. The Alliance has established credible defensive capabilities. Any military action would risk escalation with unpredictable consequences. The Eldarin speaks wisdom, said the representative of the Solari Collective, a species known for its tactical acumen. Our intelligence suggests the Alliance has developed shield technologies that may challenge even our advanced weaponry. A military solution is not assured. Zextrol's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with frustration. For the first time in his long tenure as Chancellor, he faced a problem that could not be resolved through traditional Council approaches. What do you propose, Kuruval? He finally asked. You have spent more time with these humans than any of us. Kuruval rose to their full height, their luminous skin glowing with intensity. I propose we acknowledge reality. The galaxy is changing. New species with new perspectives are emerging at an unprecedented rate. Our 3,000-year-old protocols were designed for a different era. If the Council is to endure for another 3 millennia, it must evolve. You suggest we capitulate to human demands, Morrill asked incredulously. I suggest we learn from them, Kuruval corrected. Their alliance has attracted 24 worlds in less than a year by offering what we have withheld: respect, equality, meaningful participation. Perhaps there is wisdom in their approach that we might incorporate into our own. After hours of intense debate, the executive committee reached a tentative consensus. The council would not take military action against the alliance, but would instead propose a diplomatic summit to establish formal relations between the two organizations. When the full council reconvened, Chancellor Zextrol announced this decision with his characteristic gravity. Though he presented it as a magnanimous gesture from a position of strength, many in the chamber recognized it for what it was: a tacit acknowledgement that the galaxy now contained two legitimate paths to interstellar cooperation. When word of the Council's decision reached Earth, Jack Daniels and the Sigma team met to discuss their response. The conference room aboard the Genesis was filled with a mixture of satisfaction and caution. "They've blinked first," Admiral Miller observed. "That's significant." "But not a victory yet," Jack cautioned. "This summit could be genuine, or it could be a delaying tactic while they develop a more comprehensive response. Either way," Paula noted, "it represents official recognition of the alliance. That alone validates our strategy." Ryan nodded agreement. "And strengthens our position with wavering worlds. The three that just joined will likely be followed by others, now that the Council has implicitly acknowledged our legitimacy." Jack reviewed the communiqué from Kuruval that had accompanied the official Council message. The Eldoran had written, "This is a beginning, not an end. Much depends on how the Alliance conducts itself in the coming negotiations. Demonstrate that your vision offers genuine benefits to galactic civilization, and even the most conservative Council members may eventually be persuaded." "We accept their invitation," Jack decided. "But we propose a neutral location for the summit. Not Nexus Prime, and not an Alliance world. Somewhere that symbolizes the potential for coexistence." The location ultimately agreed upon was Harmony Station, an ancient space habitat, in a sector claimed by neither the Council nor the Alliance. Originally constructed by a species long since ascended beyond physical form, the station had been maintained as a cultural archive and occasional meeting ground for various civilizations. As preparations for the Harmony Summit began, both the Council and the Alliance positioned themselves carefully. Alliance worlds accelerated their integration, standardizing communication protocols and defense systems while expanding their trade network. The Council, meanwhile, began a careful reassessment of its integration policies, with several committees formed to explore possible reforms. 2 months later, delegations from both organizations arrived at Harmony Station. The Council sent 30 representatives led by Chancellor Zextrol himself, a sign of the importance they placed on these negotiations. The Alliance delegation, led jointly by Jack Daniels and Admiral Miller, included members from all 27 worlds, now part of their network. The grand meeting hall of Harmony Station, with its transparent dome, revealing the star-filled void beyond, provided a fitting backdrop for this historic gathering. As the delegations took their places at the circular table, designed so that no position held prominence over others, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Chancellor Zextrol opened the proceedings with a carefully worded address. "For 3 millennia, the Galactic Council has guided the development of civilization among the stars. We have prevented wars, managed resources, and integrated hundreds of species into a cooperative framework that has brought unprecedented stability to our galaxy." He paused, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing slowly. "Recent developments have challenged some of our fundamental assumptions. The emergence of the Orion Alliance represents both a critique of our methods and an alternative vision for galactic cooperation. We have convened this summit to explore whether these different approaches can coexist for the benefit of all species." Jack Daniels spoke next, standing tall, despite being physically dwarfed by many of the alien representatives. "The Alliance thanks the Council for its willingness to engage in this dialogue. Our withdrawal from Council negotiations was not a rejection of cooperation, but a recognition that true cooperation requires equality." He gestured to the diverse representatives of Alliance worlds. What unites us is not a desire to challenge Council authority, but to establish a framework where each civilization, regardless of its age or technological development, can contribute meaningfully to our shared future. We believe the galaxy is vast enough for multiple paths to cooperation. Over the next week, the two delegations engaged in extensive discussions, covering everything from trade protocols to defense arrangements to cultural exchange programs. The negotiations were challenging. 3,000 years of established procedure could not be revised easily, and the Alliance's insistence on equality clashed with deeply held Council assumptions about the natural order of galactic development. Throughout, Ambassador Kuruval played a crucial role as a bridge between the two perspectives. Having spent time with both organizations, the Eldarin diplomat could translate concepts and intentions across the conceptual divide that separated them. On the fifth day of negotiations, a breakthrough occurred during a discussion of technology sharing protocols. The Council had always restricted access to advanced technologies based on a civilization's development level, a classification system that many Alliance worlds had found arbitrary and constraining. Rather than classifying technologies by development level, Jack proposed, what if we classified them by risk factor? Technologies with minimal potential for misuse could be freely shared, while those with greater risk would require demonstrated safeguards regardless of a species' age or classification. The concept resonated with several Council representatives, who had themselves chafed at the rigidity of the traditional system. After extensive debate, a framework emerged for a new approach to technology sharing that could be implemented by both organizations. This initial agreement created momentum. Over the following days, similar breakthroughs occurred in discussions of trade regulations, diplomatic protocols, and even defense coordination. By focusing on specific issues rather than broad philosophical differences, the delegations found unexpected areas of alignment. On the final day of the summit, Chancellor Zextrol and Jack Daniels signed what would come to be known as the Harmony Accords, a comprehensive agreement establishing formal relations between the Galactic Council and the Orion Alliance. The document recognized both organizations as legitimate expressions of galactic cooperation, while establishing frameworks for collaboration in areas of mutual interest. As the signing ceremony concluded, Zextrol approached Jack privately. "You have achieved something remarkable, Ambassador Daniels," the ancient Varaxian acknowledged. "Few would have predicted this outcome when you walked out of our chamber a year ago." "The credit belongs to many," Jack replied diplomatically, "including those within the Council who were willing to consider change." Zextrol's patterns pulsed with what Jack had learned to recognize as wry amusement. "I have led the Council for 70 years, Ambassador. In that time, I have seen civilizations rise and fall, threats emerge and be contained. But I had not encountered a challenge quite like yours, a challenge not to our power, but to our assumptions. And now, Zextrol said thoughtfully, we adapt, as all successful species must. The Council will continue, but it will not be precisely the same Council it was before. Your alliance has seen to that." "For the better, I hope," Jack offered. "Time will tell," Zextrol replied. "But I suspect history will mark this moment as significant. The day the galaxy acknowledged that wisdom can come from the young as well as the old, that different paths can lead to the same destination." As the delegations prepared to depart Harmony Station, Jack found himself standing beside Kuruval at a viewport, gazing out at the assembled vessels of both organizations, once potential adversaries, now cautious partners. "When I withdrew from the Council chamber that day," Jack reflected, "I never imagined we would end up here." "Didn't you?" Kuruval asked, their luminous skin rippling with gentle curiosity. "Your Sigma protocol seems to have unfolded with remarkable precision." Jack smiled. "We had contingencies and hopes, Ambassador. But diplomacy, like life, rarely follows a perfect plan. We adapted as circumstances evolved." "As did the Council," Kuruval noted, "though with considerably more reluctance." "Do you think it will last?" Jack asked the question that had been weighing on his mind throughout the negotiations. This new arrangement between our organizations. Kuruval considered the question with the thoughtfulness characteristic of their species. I believe it can, Ambassador. Not without challenges, certainly. There are elements within both the Council and your alliance who would prefer a less cooperative approach. But the foundation we have built here is sound. Because we found common ground. Because we acknowledged a fundamental truth that had been forgotten, Kuruval corrected. That the greatest strength of any interstellar community lies not in uniformity, but in diversity of perspective, of approach, of experience. Your humans have a saying I've come to appreciate: unity without uniformity, diversity without division. Jack nodded, recognizing the quote. An ancient Earth philosophy. I'm impressed you've studied our culture so deeply. Understanding begins with curiosity, Kuruval replied. Perhaps that is the legacy of these accords, a reminder that curiosity about our differences can lead to discovery of our commonalities. 1 month later, representatives from both the Galactic Council and the Orion Alliance gathered on Earth for the formal implementation of the Harmony Accords. The location was symbolic recognition of humanity's central role in creating this new galactic paradigm. The ceremony took place in the United Earth Government's Grand Assembly in Geneva, with delegates from over 300 worlds in attendance. Jack Daniels and Chancellor Zextrol presided jointly, a visual representation of the new relationship between their organizations. As Jack surveyed the assembled representatives, Council worlds arranged by tradition on one side, Alliance members on the other, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment tinged with humility. What had begun as a desperate gambit, a refusal to accept subordinate status, had evolved into something far more significant, a restructuring of galactic diplomatic relations. Distinguished representatives. Jack began, today, marks not an ending, but a beginning. The Harmony Accords represent a recognition that galactic civilization is strengthened by diversity of approach, by multiple paths to cooperation. Zextrol spoke next, his once dismissive tone now measured and respectful. For 3 millennia, the Council has guided interstellar relations according to principles established by our founders. Today, we acknowledge that those principles can evolve without being abandoned, that wisdom comes in many forms and from many sources. Together, they activated the holographic display, showing the full text of the Accords, a document that established parallel recognition between the organizations, created joint committees for technology sharing and defense coordination, and formalized procedures for worlds to transition between Council and Alliance membership should they choose. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Miller joined Jack at the reception that followed. Not bad for a species the Council once classified as developing, she observed with characteristic understatement. Jack smiled. We're still developing, as is every species regardless of how long they've traveled the stars. Perhaps that's the most important lesson from all of this, that growth never truly ends. Philosophical in your old age, Ambassador, Miller teased. Realistic, Jack corrected. What we've built here will face challenges. There will be resistant setbacks, moments when the easy path would be to retreat to separation and suspicion. Maintaining this new relationship will require as much determination as creating it did. Then it's fortunate, said a melodic voice behind them, that determination appears to be a defining human characteristic. They turned to find Ambassador Kuruval, approaching, accompanied by several Council representatives, who had once been among humanity's strongest critics. Ambassador Kuruval, Jack greeted them warmly. Your support has been invaluable throughout this process. I merely recognized what others were slow to see, Kuruval replied. That sometimes the greatest wisdom lies in acknowledging one's mistakes. The Council's approach to Earth was flawed from the beginning, rooted in assumptions that your species consistently defied. And now, Miller asked. Now we learn from each other, Kuruval said simply. The Council brings 3 millennia of experience in managing interstellar relations. The Alliance brings fresh perspective and innovative approaches. Together, we create something stronger than either could achieve alone. As the reception continued, Jack found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a refusal, humanity's withdrawal from peace talks that offered only subordination, had catalyzed a fundamental shift in the galactic order. Not through military might or economic dominance, but through the power of an alternative vision, a demonstration that cooperation did not require hierarchy, that different paths could lead to shared prosperity. The Sigma Protocol, originally conceived as a survival strategy, had evolved into a transformation strategy. By refusing to accept the terms offered by charting their own path, humans had not only secured their place among the stars, but had helped create a more equitable framework for all species. As Jack gazed out at the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds, some ancient and steeped in tradition, others young and burning with innovation, he saw not the ending of a diplomatic crisis, but the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. An era where multiple approaches to cooperation could coexist, where diversity of perspective was recognized as strength rather than weakness, where even the youngest species could contribute meaningfully to the collective wisdom of galactic civilization. And in that moment, Jack understood the true significance of humanity's journey. They had withdrawn from peace talks, not to reject cooperation, but to demand it on terms of mutual respect. In doing so, they had not only secured their own future among the stars, but had helped create a more inclusive vision of what galactic civilization could become. The Galaxy Council had indeed realized their mistake, and in that realization lay the seeds of transformation, not just for humanity, but for all who journeyed among the stars.